Hello and welcome to today's training session with Sundown AI. Today we're going to be reviewing the variables and how to set these variables up on our user interface to get Chloe trained. Let's first of all start off by defining what is a variable. So variables are used whenever it is that the system needs to do a lookup within an external database to find some information that's being requested on behalf of the client. To give you a specific example, for the e-commerce shops, it's very common that they work with order numbers or product inquiries. So whenever a user comes to their site and asks for an update on a current order, what they do is they provide an order number. And these order numbers are usually stored in some sort of external database where we integrate Chloe so that she's able to access that information and then do a lookup to provide the proper update or the proper status on where this order may be. And the order numbers constantly change, so it's something that the variable will be able to look up and determine which specific order it is, even though the values do vary. So that's just a specific example. We use variables for a lot of things. We could use it to replace sensitive data such as email addresses, first and last name. If you have your customer information stored in, for example, a CRM or in any other business suite, and they have maybe sensitive information such as credit card information or their social security, then what we do is we replace these sensitive values with the variable placeholders. To add this to the user interface, it's actually very simple. And the way we do this is there's two sections within the dialog. So within the dialog, you have to click on the variables, and you'll notice that there's two different sections. You have the variable name, and you also have the default value. So you'll notice that here I have one example, which is a first name of a variable, but I'll teach you how to add this from scratch. So let's say, for example, if I wanted to do it for order numbers, then I could do something such as order number. This would be my value, and then I'll want to add an example of what that order number looks like, the value, so the system can recognize it. So let's say that, order number 89047, and the type is always going to be list variable, and then what we do is we click on the plus sign to add it, and you'll notice how the order number is automatically assigned to the to the user interface. And we do the same process with any other variable that we may have. So if it's something like email address, then we could set something such as an email, and then I would put an example of what an email looks like. And it's the same thing. You leave it as a list variable, and then you click on the plus sign. Now, if I were to go back to my dialog, and what I need to do within my dialog section is label those variables. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'll show you an example. We'll click on the training section. And within the training section is where we need to assign these variables. This is a demo account, so just for demo purposes, I'll show you what it looks like to replace these values. Let's go ahead and add an email address to this dialog so you could see what that would look like. So here's a demo chat that I've set up just for training purposes. And just like any other section of the user interface or any other record that needs to be labeled, it needs to be done by question answer pair. So what we'll do is we'll go through every single QA pair of this chat and figure out where it is that we need to add these variables. So on the first QA pair, I added my email, first name, and order number. There's nothing related to these variables, so I could just go ahead and click on submit. Note that not every single QA pair has to have a variable labeled. This isn't like the intents. The intents, they do need to be labeled per QA pair, but for the variables, we only label them when it's needed. So in this section right here, I can see that they already asked for the first name and last name. So I already have my variable for first name, so all I have to do is just highlight and then drag it to that field. I don't have one for my last name, so what I'll go ahead and do is I'll go ahead and add my last name as a variable. So I'm going to have to go back to my variable section, and I'm going to include something such as last name, L name, and then I'll add black, click on the plus sign, and now I can go back to my dialog. Always refresh it because it's not going to appear unless you refresh your page. So you could go ahead and refresh your page, and then you'll notice that the last name appears. So now I'm going to want to go back to my same QA pair, and let me go ahead and relabel the first name. And I'm going to do the same thing with my last name, just highlight the last name and then drag it to the placeholder, and then click on submit. You always have to click on submit because if not, the changes won't be saved. Then here on this next QA pair, I have an email address. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to highlight my email and I'm going to drag it to the email section and then click on submit. And then on this last QA pair, there really isn't any other variable that needs to be labeled. Now, as you continue to do the labeling on different QA pairs, you'll notice that these same fields are going to appear over and over again. So you'll notice different first names, different last names, different email addresses. So what we do in those cases is we go back to the variable section. And in this case, for example, on the first name, I currently have Ingrid as a sample, but I did run into the first name of Angel. So what I'll do is I'll add that as a value, type in the name, and then click on the plus sign. And then right here on the check mark, you have to go ahead and click on it so that changes can be saved. So now if I were to click on this on the drop down, you'll be able to see the value of Angel added. And I'll do the same process with any other name that I come across in my database, and whatever is labeled, I'll continue to add those values and to save them. And that's pretty much it. That would cover how to add variables to the user interface. Once again, feel free to visit our resources page where you could find additional information on how to train and set up Chloe. Alternatively, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at any time. You could send us an email at info@sundown.ai. And you could also visit our website at www.sundown.ai and send us any inquiries that you may have. Thank you, and I hope this has been useful. Have a wonderful day.